Good day, it's Peter Temple with a final calendar update. It's kind of a tweak on what I gave you a couple of weeks ago, and it hasn't really changed that much. You can find me generally at New Earth Rising, that's my channel, on Telegram, and I am there most of the time, will be until this thing plays out. The date today that I'm giving this to you is November the 17th, and I think this is my final update. So I just want to bring you up to date on what I've known really for over the last week, and I've really been sort of filling in some holes. So here's our calendar. Let's just start by looking at what I've given you overall here. This is November, and we start off up here with November the 9th. Here we are today on the 17th. So I've given you last week, and I'm giving you this week, which is a major week. And you can see that I filled in a lot of information on here. Here's Thanksgiving, and then I think we have the emergency broadcast system here. On my other calendar, it became apparent a few days later that we probably weren't going to get the emergency broadcast system in this area here with the green background, because that didn't make sense to try and shut things down, get people into their homes, give them the emergency broadcast system, and then go into Thanksgiving. It makes more sense to do a lead up to it, which they are doing, and they're moving everything we've been expecting into this final week. And then we end up going into Thanksgiving, and then we end up on the 28th going into the emergency broadcast system. And I believe this all ends on December the 7th. Okay, I've got two calendars here. The Gregorian calendar is along the numbers along the top. That's the one you're used to. The Gregorian calendar comes from, the Julian calendar are the red numbers, and that's the original calendar that came from Julius Caesar at the top of the Roman Empire, and that's the one that the military follows. That's the real calendar right now. And then we're going to another calendar coming up, which is going to be called a lunar calendar, and that's going to change our 12 months to 13 months, but within the same period of time. Still within the same 364 days a year, but it's going to make each of the months 28 days, which aligns with the moon and is the natural cycle. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of where I'm going today. Let's go back to what I gave you pretty much a couple of weeks ago with the original calendar that really took you to the end stage here. These were the lines, the phrases that we were given over these 5 years that we've been waiting for this thing to happen. I've been sort of partially awake 20 years ago, so this has been a long haul for me, and I know for you, a lot of you are very similar to that. But, you know, we heard that it had started in Dallas, which of course was November the 22nd, when JFK was assassinated, and that it's going to end in Dallas. And we have November the 22nd, coming up again in just about a week. So that is key, and I see that as a major turning point. Remember the 5th of November. Now, that was a major turning point that I talked about in terms of the Gregorian calendar, and I will talk about that coming up here, because we have another 5th of November coming up on Tuesday. That's tomorrow, and that's on the Julian calendar. And I had thought that they would relate this to 1605, when the 5th of November was very important. It was the start of a revolution, or the design of a revolution that failed, and that was in 1605 when James I was in power, was the king. And so there's a story certainly around that. And there was V for Vendetta, which was a movie that talked about blowing up buildings and things from the 4th going into the 5th of November. So I think we're going to get that this week. And so it begins. If you've been following Trump and some of the things that he's been saying, the calm that he's been giving us lately and over again is, and so it begins, and it relates to this graphic. And I've shown that before. This is the mountain graphic with 3 mountains, 1, 2, and 3 as they're labeled here. And then we have So It Begins, which goes from the 4th up to the 13th. And then in here, you can't quite see it, but there is a heart on this middle mountain with a 14 in the middle of it, and that is the final date on this So It Begins. And so I'm going to reference this during today's talk. We've got some interesting things happening. The night before last, we actually had the 4 western provinces of Canada join the U.S. Republic. And I'm going to refer to the Republic. The Republic in the U.S. is now live. It was live apparently on the 11th, but most certainly on the 13th of November. It's just, it's a decision as to when they call it live, when it was when Congress opened, when we had the vote, or when Congress actually opened up last week. So that is a major turning point. And I'll tell you, we can't go back. We are committed now. And with that and the quantum financial system, which was activated on the 15th, which was just 2 days ago. So everything is lined up. It is happening, and this is a major marker. I don't know why they've done it with just the 4 provinces and not the rest, but there's obviously a story there. You can't bring those into the Republic without the Republic being live, so that's a major calm. We have got this week, at some point, we're going to get all of these dominoes that are going to fall, and XRP, I understand, has been named a security now, which means that it can retain value and be traded, and so that's a major turning point for it. So there's Bitcoin there, which is going to come down. We're getting rid of Bitcoin. 99.5% of it, they say, and here are the other currencies. So with the currencies, they're going to be revaluated. So all of the currencies in the world will have the same value, all right? They're all going to be on a one-to-one basis, and this is what we're getting, the revaluation of currencies based on that, because they all have to be brought up, like the Zimbabwe dollar. It has to be brought up to the level of the U.S. dollar. Same thing with the dinar in Iraq and Venezuela, and all of them have to be settled down and then brought up, because Venezuela is still in play. Brought up to the level of the U.S. dollar, and then everything, then that's the revaluation, and the stock market will come down. And so there's a major kind of apocalypse here in the stock market, which we're going to see. Not the final, but we are going to see the stock market crash. And those are the key things I wanted to show you today. There's one other thing on the bottom here where I talk about this graphic. It will be biblical. We know that. We can consider this the second coming. And along that line, because of my spiritual background, which I won't go into, I talk to my guardians, and some of you will get this. Some of you that are awake and are spiritual will get this. But something happened to me on November 8th and 9th. I asked my guardians a couple of days earlier, now can you give me any update in terms of when this thing is going to be over, or a calendar date, or just something? Is there something you can do just to help me out that way? And on November the 8th, that night, I woke up at 1:27 a.m. I thought that was very strange. I have an iPad, and I basically say, hey, Siri, what time is it when I wake up, or when I'm kind of prompted, because that's what they do spiritually. So I asked, and it was 1:27 a.m. And then on the 9th, the next night, I woke up at exactly the same time, 1:27 a.m. And I asked again, same process. Yeah, 1:27 a.m. So 1:27 a.m., that is the same thing as, you can take the 12 and the 7, and it's December the 7th. December the 7th was a very special date, which I will get into. Well, I'll tell you right now, it was Pearl Harbor. And that would be an interesting date to end this whole thing. Now, the kicker to this was I had a night after that really nothing happened. And then the following night, on November the 11th, then I woke up at 11:17 p.m., before midnight. And you can look at that number, and it resolves to 127. So what is that? 12/7, December 7th. Now, the odds of this happening and waking me up at those times in the middle of the night, I mean, what are the odds? Right through the roof. So I took that as being a major signal. And so for you, those of you who get it, that's the news that I have, and the other ones that are still asleep and don't get it and are not very spiritual probably won't understand that. But that's life, and that's where we're moving, that's where we're going, so it's getting exciting. Back to our calendar, so let me just take you through what I've got here. This is the week before where we are now. Again, here we are on the 17th of November on the Gregorian calendar. Here are the Julian calendar numbers. We had the vote to open up Congress on, these things are live, I have to remember that, on November the 9th, which was, of course, 9/11. November is the 11th month, 9 here, so that's a 9/11 date, so that was important. It was also, and I have 41 days here, but it's either this date or this date was 40 days of having Congress closed. So that is 40 days and 40 nights. You know that from the Bible, and we've talked about the second coming and Noah and everything else before. So we had Congress opening up. But the interesting thing about this Congress is everybody had thought we were shutting down USA Inc., which doesn't exist anymore, the Congress. In fact, we sort of were, but when it opened back up this last week, it was the New Republic Congress that we were looking at, and that was a major revelation, believe me, and that meant that we are now in a new country. I'm in the 51st state, so I'm also in a new country, because that is in Alberta, and we're part of the USA now. So that's great, and I think that was done some time ago, but they've made this quasi-public. I don't think it's out there publicly yet, but it has been announced. So Congress we had in session, and that sort of ended up going to the 13th, and that was Halloween on the Julian calendar, the end of October, right there. And then we had, the next day was the 14th. Well, of course, that relates to the mountain graphic. It was Charles's birthday. I thought something might happen there, but realistically, Charles, being the king in the chess game, should be the last character to come down off that chessboard. And so I expect that to be down in here, let's say on the 21st, 1121, which I think is 11.3, and they're saying that that is going to relate to the currency reset. So there's some other reasons that would happen here as well, which I'll get to. So then we had the 14th, so it begins, and this begins the final set of events that take us to the final date, which is December the 7th, which is actually down here. I didn't create another block down here, but it would be just down here. And that's the reason we have this line across here, because this is two dates. It's the 23rd and the 24th here. It is the 6th and the 7th on the Gregorian calendar. So these numbers are Julian. And if you were to take this number here, it relates to 17 on the Julian calendar. 11, you get a 1, 3, 1, 2 equals 3, 4. All right, so that's 17. So that's kind of interesting. So let's get back to where I left off here on the 14th. So that begins the big process of moving forward. We have 3 1s here on the Julian calendar, November the 1st. All right, so that's important. All these numbers, there's so many 11s, it's incredible. And then we have the QFS rather, activated on the 13th, which means that the whole structure of the quantum financial system is now activated. Doesn't mean it's actually live and that we can use it, but it is activated. It doesn't actually go live until we get to the 22nd, which is a week after this, okay? So we don't have that far to go before that happens. Now, this is when the 4 provinces were announced in Canada joined the U.S. Republic. So the Republic came in either on the 11th or 13th, depending on how you count, either the vote or opening up Congress. And so that was the major turning point here, as far as I'm concerned, certainly in terms of Canada, which has been a territory for the longest time. It hasn't actually been a country. Then we had Mexico, which is now starting to come apart. And we have got riots in Mexico. The people are rising up against the government, and the U.S. is in the background, and they're going to take down Mexico and the cartel. It's a huge drug cartel. We've known that for a long time, so Mexico has got to be cleaned up. And that started on the 15th, more to go. Then we learned yesterday on the 16th that California now is under lockdown. So the military has moved into California and it's going to get cleaned up. Apparently Newsom has capitulated. And so that is good news. At the same time, they were saying that they're lightening up on the military in Chicago, so that must be going well, and also in Portland, Oregon. And those are two major centers that really deep state, and so they've got to clean those up. One of the things that I've said, for anybody listening and who is thinking about the RV, in order to get the RV going and go to a redemption center, the military has to be in full control because it has to be safe for us to travel. And maybe they will do that in little military convoys. I'm not sure how it's going to play out. Or it will be late enough into next week that it will be safe to do so. So, watch for that because I think we're going to get in this area. We're actually going to get the RV and the market coming down. The market is sitting there, very close to a top, but it's sitting in the bottom. Anybody that's in Elliott wave, sitting at the bottom of a fourth wave, and it's got one more little wave up to do a double top, and then I expect it to come down. I think this was going to last the week. There is a new moon here on the 20th. Typically, the market will rise into a moon. Okay, and then it will come down the next day or typically next morning, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm not sure exactly when the apex of this moon is during the day, but it is on the 20th. So going back with martial law, pretty well, it's pretty well in soft martial law, but we're going to see more of this happening. There was a Simpsons video that came out. This is the 24th. If you look at these numbers, 11, which is a 2, and a 4 is the 24th. There was a Simpsons video that came out last week that talked about the 24th and a blackout. I'm not sure we're going to get it here. It's interesting. There are other 24s. And then there was a video that came out yesterday about the 17th Simpson video and a blackout. So keep that in mind. I suppose there could be one. I'm not really expecting that because I don't know why it would be here. Med beds, there are all kinds of dates out there in terms of med beds. This is the 17th, by the way, and that's 2-4, so it's an interesting combination. Med beds are live, I hear, but not accessible to us. The first people that will be they're actually working with children and the military, veterans, that sort of thing. It'll be triaged on an ongoing basis, and I think we're going to see it live for the humanitarians, the starseeds, and people like that, the ones that are awake. Any of you out there should be able to, certainly if you're in Telegram and they know about you, because they are watching Telegram. You're going to, when we do the redemptions, you are going to be at the top of the list for med beds. Okay, they'll start, I think, somewhere in here, and then after the emergency broadcast system, which is down here, then they will be open to the general public. We're already starting to see comms and things about that, but the dates are all over the map, so it's difficult. Here is on the 18th, that's tomorrow. The 18th is another November the 5th, and that was, remember the 5th of November was the, oh my goodness, can't think of his name, Guy Fawkes Day in the UK, and that was the attempt to overturn the monarchy in the Parliament of the day, and that was in 1605 on the November 5th date. So they're using the Julian calendar for that, and we have not had the scare event. So I figure, we go back to the days when we knew that we were going to have those buildings coming down. Probably it could be tonight going into tomorrow, or it could be on the 18th here, which would be the 5th of November. But I think this is going to be kind of magical and at the same time scary, because the scare event is here to wake up the normies. It's not for the awake. It's really targeted on the asleep. We need to get more people woken up into what is happening. This war, which is ramping up, is going to include Venezuela, which is pretty obvious, England, apparently, Netanyahu, which would be Israel, and I think it may also involve Taiwan as well, and China. But there is going to be, I think, an atomic an atomic standoff at least, and maybe something will go off somewhere. I'm not sure. We still have the Statue of Liberty that has to come down, the 34 buildings, and most of the major dams in the world, including the Three Gorges Dam in China. So that looks like it's going to happen here. It's kind of last minute, but everything seems to be pushed into the last week. Now, here's the new moon on Thursday. Interesting that it's here because we've got a market that needs to come down. And I think this is probably going to be the market top on either the 20th or the 21st. But to me, it's looking like the 21st. We're going to have a revaluation, which is going to come in at the same time because of the market drops. We're going to get the changes in currencies. Bitcoin is going to absolutely collapse. I don't know if it's going to collapse in one day, but it's going to collapse. XRP, which has now become a security and is really the pipeline very similar to Swift, which I have mentioned down here. Swift, which was used in the old regime. And it is going to be the one to watch because I think a lot of funding is going to go towards XRP and out of Bitcoin. So that should be something to watch before the end of the week. I think it's going to be, if we go to a blackout here, which we should after the buildings and everything happening in here, then I would think the start of alerts would be on the 20th. It's 11/7 here, which you could call Jesus's birthday because we know Jesus's birthday is 7/11. And what else do I have for you? On that date, that's about it. This actually should point over here. I had nowhere else to put it over here. But here's what I think potentially is our market top on the 21st. Starts in Dallas, ends in Dallas, refers to the 22nd, which of course follows the 21st. 3i Atlas, which you've probably heard about, it looks like it is a starship of some kind or a community of them or something to that effect. It has an awful lot to do with ascension and the wake-up process. And it's a little cloudy right now, lots of reports out, but it's the closest. They told us some time ago, 21st would be the closest it would be to Earth on that date. And they're talking about Charles going in the day before the 22nd, which I consider to be the end because it was JFK's assassination, is when I would think Charles would come down. He would I'd probably be indicted, and maybe he's going to die the same day. I don't know how they're going to play that. And in fact, I don't know how. I mean, if we got the Epstein files, which are on the verge of coming out, this could be sped up. And, I think if we got the Epstein files coming out, it would trigger martial law. And, it could happen as early as today, tonight, could happen anytime during this week, but they're on the verge of coming out. So lots going on this week. Then we get to my red square here, which is, and by the way, these background colors of green, this is 10 days. All right, so you can look at that and go, okay, 10 days. This over here with the brown background, 10 days, including the Sunday down here. Okay, and I've explained that earlier on. So here's JFK's assassination in Dallas. It ends in Dallas, starts in Dallas. It is also 9/11 down here on the Julian calendar. JFK Jr is supposed to appear here, and maybe JFK, because they say he is alive. I don't know whether that's one and the same person or what, but you're going to have a big surprise, I think, on JFK Jr. when he appears. And that, they're saying, will be the 22nd through the 23rd, that's going to happen. And then I think we have the end of this sort of blackout phase. The other thing that happens on the 22nd, which is key, is we're getting the end of Swift and adopting the ISO 22022 signification, and that is on the 23rd, which really takes the QFS, Quantum Financial System, live and allows payments to go through internationally through XRP. Okay, so that's the way it all happens. So the QFS live should be on the 22nd, not the 23rd, but technically on the 22nd. But that means that we can start to use that once we get the funds, which is still to come. I think this is probably RV time, although I see I've moved that off the chart. Somewhere in here, I think we will get the notifications on the RV, and the humanitarians and those that are awake, starseeds, will move towards redemption centers. There's another 24 here, which could be a blackout, but I think that there's a major blackout here. I don't know whether we'll get a new one This is 11/11 in here, so the 24th is an important day. You can think of it as, although this is November, as the day before Christmas in a way. Then we have Red October, they tell us, is November the 25th. Well, is that the start of tribunals? That's kind of what it signifies. It could also be a start of EBS, although I think EBS is going to start the day after Thanksgiving on Black Friday. Here's your Thanksgiving. This is also a 14. Okay, bring back our. It's amazing how these things work, boy, because here's another sort of cutoff major. November the 27th. Thanksgiving is a major day in the United States. It is the highest frequency or vibration all year long in the stock market. You can always see that in the stock market. This is the day for the U.S. There's supposed to be a major announcement by Trump on the 27th, and I think that's going to be Gasara. It remains to be seen, but it's 11/14, and that would lead in, I believe, to the emergency broadcast system. Now, they could start it earlier on the 25th, and if it starts earlier, then it would back up the ending earlier and end it on this full moon here on the 4th. So that's interesting, but I think what I've got here works a lot better. So let's look at EBS on the 28th. Of course, I don't know any of this. I'm using critical thinking, using the numbers that are on the chart, what I know that has to happen. And so here is a commercial, I can't call it a holiday because it's not really a one, but it's a commercial event each year, and it signifies the commercial aspects of Christmas, which of course is satanic. The December 25th had nothing to do with Jesus' birthday, and it's the satanic grip on the calendar and throwing us off, and of course that's all going to change. So I think you saw with the, I always call it, because I lived in New York years and years ago, the Macy's Day Parade, which of course Mandami, if you're following that, kind of canceled it, but didn't. He required a whole bunch of money from the organizers, and they decided they weren't going to pay it. So I don't know if that's going ahead on the 27th or not, but to me it was a military comm saying, I don't think we're going to have Christmas, and that would make an awful lot of sense. So that's another reason this all has to end before Christmas, because we're taking that out. And just hold on here. I got a little surprise at the end of this. So Black Friday is on the 28th, 11/15 after 11/14. So that's anew, and so it begins. And then we've got our 10 days here of the emergency broadcast system. So this is another designation of Red October. Actually, this would be on the Sunday because it's the 25th. This is the 24th on the 7th here. And the day after is actually, where would I see that? Would be 8. This is actually 11/7 here. And so this would be Jesus' birthday. And then we would have a Sunday here. Oh, sorry, this is the Sunday. I always get confused with these things because you get 2 days here. This is the Saturday on the 23rd. Here's the 24th. This ends up being 7/11 over here on the Sunday, which of course is Jesus' birthday and would be the end of the EBS, the way this thing works out. Isn't that amazing? December 7th, 12/7, is Pearl Harbor Day. And that would be an interesting day to finish this off. December 8th is 7/11, I think, on the Julian calendar. One of those 2 days. That doesn't look like it being an 8 right there. But that is on the Julian calendar, and I would have to go check that. But it does sort of end up on 7/11, Jesus' birthday. And I think that is our calendar. And that was my download, that it would all finish up on December the 7th. So there's your calendar. That is about all I've got to tell you on that, and we'll have to see how it plays out. It's played out very well since the last calendar I gave you, but again, they don't want you to know the order of events. They don't want you to know the dates. And so any of this in terms of the information I put in, all of these boxes may change. They may move the order around, but using critical thinking, this is the way it looks to me that it's going to play out, and it's going to happen very, very quickly. So that's my report 4, here we are on November the 17th, and this is going to be the start. I mean, look ahead, because this is the kickoff for a pretty amazing week, it looks like, and 3 weeks actually in a row. And that will be the end of our 5-year wait period for most of us, and many more that have known that this was going to happen, or something like this was going to happen at this time. So please stay safe. Your life is about to change, and things are really going to get moving during Thanksgiving. And I would love to be a fly on the wall for some Thanksgiving dinners that have combinations of the awake and the asleep across the table from each other, and just on the verge of going through the emergency broadcast system, the way things are turning out. So interesting times up ahead, but by the end of it, then everything is going to be changed. Now, there's one other thing I'll mention. I don't know if it's going to happen, but Trump always said, or it was said about Trump, that when Trump returns, the world will have changed. I got a feeling they have to get rid of that character or send him away at some point. And we've had lots of calms about that. And I think it might happen somewhere in here or after the speech. Then you go into EBS, and then he comes back at the end. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. I don't know if it's even going to play out, because it's been so long. But Dan Scavino, his right-hand man, has been alluding to this for a long time. So we'll see what happens. I think this is my final report. Bless you all for hanging in there. And I'm hoping that we're going to wake up the rest of the sleepers and move towards ascension. And it's going to be a real interesting next 5 years, believe me.